Good afternoon, everyone. The time is 2 o'clock, and I'll call the May 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I'll start by acknowledging that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation of Alberta District 11, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Neowak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our Treaty 6 relationship that we can live, work, and play on treaty territory. First, I will ask for approval of the minutes from the April 16th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Abatoy.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that Council approves the April 26th Committee of the Whole minutes as presented and circulated.
Thank you. Is there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Is it Councillor Harris?
No, we're actually waiting for Mayor Ketcher.
Thank you. That's carried. Next on our agenda is delegations. We don't have anyone pre-registered, and there is no one in the gallery today. So we will move on to our first presentation, which is Transit Service Review, and I'd like to welcome Lindsay Radford.
So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Committee of the Whole. My name is Lindsay Radford. I'm the Transit Supervisor, and with me today is Richard Gagnon, the Public Works Director. So we're here today to provide you with information on our 2024 Transit Review and to provide you with information on our action plan that will help to achieve our current service levels and improve our transit programs. So we will be providing you with highlights of the Transit Review and the action plan, which are included in the Council report as Appendix A. Just a little background. So according to the 2015 City of Fort Saskatchewan Growth Study, our population is expected to reach around 35,000 people by 2033. So in anticipation of this growth, Transit conducted a review of the current service and is making recommendations based on the areas identified that are in need of improvement. So after reviewing the performance of each route, it became apparent that there were two key areas that were not meeting our current service standards. The developing areas in the newer neighborhoods are lacking in service within walking distance, and the on-time performance targets of the local service are not being met today. So to address these, administration will be making a number of recommendations over the next few years. The first set of recommendations are being made with the goal of achieving our current set of service standards. The most significant recommendation included here is to expand the local service into the new developing neighborhoods and to redesign the fixed system to coincide with the new service introduction. We are also including a project to improve the accessibility of bus stops that would be potentially beneficial or benefiting from grant funding that could be coming available in the next few years. So it's a little on the operating costs. So the costs here are primarily just showing that expansion of service into the developing neighborhoods. And as the service will be implemented during the summer months when it is a bit warmer and a little bit more forgiving, and also gives us to trial the system before the fall increase in ridership, you won't see the full cost in 2027. This would just be for half the year. And then in 2028, we would see the full year costs. You'll also see on this one a transfer to reserve, and that's to foresee the future fleet needs to expand the service. So then looking at the capital costs for achieving the service levels, as our current fleet is fully utilized to operate the current service, we would be needing additional buses to operate any expansion of service. And as there is a significant lead time to order and receive a bus, that is why you see the capital request in 2025, even though we would not be implementing service until 2027. And you'll also see the bus stop project on there. This one would be primarily contingent on the federal grant funding that will be coming available. If that grant funding is not available, we would reevaluate this recommendation. So now I'll go over some of the improvements we are looking for after we have achieved our current service levels. We would be wanting to improve the service. So these recommendations here are primarily to increase the ridership from the new areas on both the local and the commuter services. So all of these recommendations are primarily looking at increasing the hours of service and also the days of service that transit is operated. So looking at the operating costs for the improvements, these do not include any capital costs because the current fleet would be able to accommodate these new services, seeing that they are during the off-peak times or on weekends when we have buses available. So you'll see most of these costs are coming in the later years between 2029 and 2031, as that's when we would be looking to implement the increase to the service levels. So for next steps, as we are just presenting information today, our next steps would be to include any recommendations in the annual budget process. So later this year, you would see any of the recommendation requests coming through from transit. And that is the overall the presentation. So very quick and hopefully be able to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you very much. And I see we also have Richard here also to answer questions. So we will start going. We'll have Councillor Nguyen first.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the report and presentation. Just a question on how our local routes operate, because I see that Pacific Western Transit is a contracted service provider. Can you tell me how this contractor integrates as we own the buses? I'm kind of unclear about that, and how is it beneficial to have a contractor, and maybe if it's necessary?
Right, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor. Yes, so we own the buses and we lease them to the contractor, Pacific Western Transit, and they operate the buses for us. They hire the operators. So the advantage there is that we don't have all of the overhead administrative costs for trainers, supervisors, dispatchers. That is all handled through Pacific Western Transit. So they provide us for a fixed rate hourly cost to provide the service for us. So if we were to take that in-house, we would then have to be hiring a number of new staff members. We would also have to be looking at storage space because as part of the contract, they also provide the storage for the buses. So they operate all of it for us on our behalf, and we just own the buses and pay them an hourly rate.
Right, okay. Thank you for that overview. Another question just regarding the grant for bus stops. So if that grant is not received, then how are we going to, or how are we proposing covering the capital costs for bus stops? And like how many, obviously we need bus stops if we're expanding our service.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor. The current bus stops are accessible today for the most part. There is a few that are not. They all have asphalt pads today. So as part of this project, we would be looking at the bus stops that have no pads today and possibly redoing some of the existing ones with a concrete pad just to make them their life cycle a little bit longer and the ability to put a shelter and any benches that we want. So if we do not get the grant funding, we would be looking at maybe just 1 or 2 new pads a year through our operating budget. We wouldn't be looking at it as a capital purchase at that point. But if we can get the grant funding, we would be able to accelerate that and get most of the bus stops done within 1 or 2 years.
Okay, so that just covers existing, life cycle replacement of current bus stops, not adding to new routes then.
Yeah, there will be new bus stops that will be added into the developing areas as we expand service. So the grant funding could also, depending on the timing, we could use it for new bus stops.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You're good. All right, we'll go to Councillor Blizzard.
Hi, thanks for the presentation and all the information in our package. I guess, first of all, Pacific Northwest Transit. So are they more efficient because they do a number of these services for different cities? Because otherwise I would think that they also up the cost for operating it, right?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor. Yes, the Pacific Western Transit, they operate the services for Beaumont, Leduc, Spruce Grove, St. Albert. So there's some shared resources that they have that we would not have if we were to operate it in-house.
Okay. And the other question is, how's cost recovery now? And I know you never make money on a bus, but, and what do we anticipate in the future? Do we have a goal? I support busing, but, I think we should also be looking at getting some of the costs covered by the people on them.
Yes, the current cost recovery ratio, I believe, is 13%. And our goal over the next 5 years is to improve that to 18%.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Ketcher.
Okay, thank you. So looking at your report, and you're not talking about Saturdays until 2030, that's 6 years away. Why would we think 6 years out? I mean, and I'm going to suggest, when people came and presented here and said they really wanted a Sherwood Park connection, I'll be honest, when I put it on my Facebook, I had 42,000 people that, and there was lots of great comments about the fact that they're going to go to Bethel. But I guess the question that I really have is, people also said that Saturdays are something that's really important to them, because if they're working during the week, they can't get around on the weekends.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to the Mayor. That is definitely something that we evaluated when we were spacing out the recommendations. We didn't want to have too many new recommendations too soon and have too much of a budget impact. But that is definitely something that we could look at to bring forward the recommendation for Saturday service, because we do recognize that there's a lot of people who work part-time on the weekends only, lots of students who have jobs on the weekend, that they would benefit from this. So one of the first things we wanted to do was get the expansion of the local service in place and have that established before introducing service either on the weekends or on the commuter and the local, because it's advantageous to have local and commuter service on Saturdays, not just one or the other. And we wanted to make sure that we had that expansion of service in place first before introducing a new service period.
So with that, then when this comes forward at budget, then somebody can make a motion to have it looked at?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then the other question that I have, in your report, you talk about a lot of wheelchairs and walkers, and that's what's potentially slowing down. But what I'm seeing is only the Walmart hospital area is the only one that you're making a change.
Yes, so the going out of those parking lots is going to save time on the overall schedule of the route. So we will still be able to accommodate the wheelchairs and any other mobility aids. It's still, like, our schedule is still very tight, even with the removal of those parking lot services. But yeah, when we have trips that are back, like one trip and then the next trip and the next trip, all with wheelchairs, it does slow those trips down. So in order to mitigate that, that's why we are removing the service into the parking lots, to try to help bring the schedules back on time.
If I can just ask the third question about the wheelchairs. Do you know how many are accessing the hospital? And is it because of wheelchairs and aids, or is that just all over the city?
It is primarily all over the city, a lot from the different agencies in town. So Lamoureux and Robin Hood, they have a lot of wheelchair users that use our buses. So not a lot of them are going to the hospital, and that is just an on-demand stop at this point. So it's not a heavily used stop, which is why we felt that removing it wouldn't be a very large impact to our current riders.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Harris.
Picking up on Mayor Kitcher's comments, I too agree that a Saturday service would make some sense, and I understand your rationale for the recommendation in that context. The question that I've got, though, is in regards to the launch of our service down to Bethel. I presume we've really got a real skookum program for advertising to generate a lot of interest in this from that standpoint. I mean, we did some advertising in the past for the commuter service to Clairview, but I think it's got to be stepped up big time. So what are our plans in terms of advertising this and really reaching out to a broad cross-section of people to get them onto the bus down to Sherwood Park and beyond.
Sure. So, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, yeah, we are working with our communications department to get the word out into all of our social media channels through the website. We are going to be placing ads at all the bus stops as well to inform our current riders. We are planning on having the roadside big LED signs, or like the ones that the census had on the side of the roads. Strathcona County Transit also is going to be doing some communication for their residents out there to see if we can get some reverse commuters as well. So yeah, so we are using a wide range of tactics to get the word out there to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think that's critical, and I think in the context, once we've got people onto the bus and evolving onto the bus as time takes us forward, I think that's a good opportunity to be eliciting response from people about Saturday service or service enhancements from that standpoint. Obviously, I had an opportunity to be involved in setting up the initial pilot project to do it, and actually I had some questions and looking back at some of the old reports and the minutes and whatnot, it was really quite interesting. But at one time, we only had the opportunity to really negotiate with ETS, and that took us into Clareview, whereas Strathcona really back in the day wasn't interested in providing the service, and they really couldn't. So I think we've reached a new opportunity with this service that will be more reflective of what people are looking for, and I think it'll improve the mobility through the region in that context. So I'm really glad to see that. I think if we have that opportunity, as Mayor Ketcher indicated, to talk about the service modifications, and that'll be in this coming budget cycle.
Correct.
So we can deal with things, I guess, as we see them coming in terms of the opportunity, and we can see the financial impacts. So that's good. I like the report. It took me back in time, and my memory is, I just learned that I've got a really bad memory, but thank you, Richard, for digging up information. It's good to see. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My first question is, you talked about the cost that's presented here to be half year. So I'm just talking specifically about transfer to reserves. You have 93,000 for 26. I'm assuming that's going to continue from 28 and beyond, right? Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that. My second question is about the environmental impacts of our transit buses, and what kind of initiatives do we have or do we plan to have as we continue to expand the services to ensure that, the environmental impact of our transit fleets is as reduced as much as possible?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor. We are currently working with a consulting company called Qtrek and also Fortis Alberta to do an evaluation on lower emission buses. So we are part of that study throughout the province of Alberta, and it will calculate the impacts to electric buses or to hydrogen or natural gas buses, and then the associated costs for your facilities. So we are working with that. We expect to get a report from them sometime later this year that we will then be able to feed back. And when we are going out to through an RFP process for new buses, we would then be able to put in there requests for alternative fuel sources or whatever direction that we as the city would like to take when it comes to those buses. But yeah, we are working through that right now. And also through the Canadian Urban Transit Association, there's a new committee that has been formed for zero emission buses. So we are part of that committee. And we will be looking at the new emerging technologies from the bus manufacturers to see what will become available for buses that of a size that we will need. And that will fit in with our community and with our future fleet needs and facility needs as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for your response. And just one last question. The question skipped my head just now. Okay, yes. Ridership. Like the numbers you have presented here are 23 numbers. What are we seeing for 2024, and what are we projecting for that ridership to increase by? Because obviously, I think I'm a big supporter of transit. I think it's important as a community service that we must provide. However, we need to make sure that, the people, that more and more people are using it to reduce the cost, right, to the city. So what is the anticipated projected ridership? What do we expect to see by 2030, for example, as the population increases?
Yeah, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, we are Immediately through this year and into 2025, we are looking to at least get back to our pre-COVID pandemic ridership numbers, especially on the commuter, with the change to the commuter route. That is our goal in the immediate term, is to get back to those pre-COVID numbers. But over time, with any new ridership, we are looking to at least meet the service standards that are set out right now. So that is about I believe it's 6 to 8 rides per hour. And so depending on the number of service hours, that will equate to the number of rides that we will get. But so as long as we are meeting our service standards, that is what our goal is. I don't have a specific figure in mind by 2030 of what our total annual ridership would be, but our goal is just to at least maintain meeting the ridership service standards. And we would also then be looking to, if we are consistently meeting that, we would be looking to update our service standards to have a more ambitious target.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just have one question. So I understand the logic behind the Walmart and the hospital, like taking that away. So I'm assuming that those stops just become like on the sidewalk alongside those sites. But I'm just curious if you had looked at or thought about the fact that there's no sidewalks at any entrance point into those sites. So once they get off the bus on a sidewalk, especially people I'm thinking with mobility issues, have no, I'll call it safe path to those buildings. And so and maybe they were getting off on a non-sidewalk place anyway, but now we're increasing the amount that someone on, say, a wheelchair has to navigate, literally driving beside cars to get into that complex. So I'm just curious if that was considered.
Madam Chair, yes, it was. There is actually a sidewalk connection where we are going to be placing the new bus stop for the Walmart that gets into the parking lot. So I can't speak to the level of maintenance in the wintertime on that sidewalk, though, since it is on private property. I can't say whether or not it is cleared to the same level as the rest of the sidewalks within Fort Saskatchewan are cleared. But there is a sidewalk connection there that we did place the bus stop adjacent to so that passengers can utilize that to get into the parking lot. And all along there into the other parking lots, we are placing them as close to other access points as we can. And because, yeah, definitely that is something that we looked at when placing the bus stops.
Does the hospital also have a sidewalk? I can't even think of the one you would be referring to for the Walmart site.
It's on the north side. There is a connection from the main sidewalk. There's a path into the parking lot. On the hospital side, there is already a bus stop that exists there. But to get into the hospital parking lot, you would have to go quite a distance around because there's from the bus stop through the parking lot, there isn't a direct sidewalk connection.
Right. Okay. Thank you. On round 2, I see we have Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. Under the reliability heading in the report, it looks like 40% of our buses are 10 minutes late, or I think maybe 35%. Why have we not yet adjusted the schedule of bus stops or altered it? What's the solution, I guess, and what are we doing?
So part of the solution is to remove the parking lot access because sometimes our buses will be sitting there for 4 to 5 minutes just trying to make a left-hand turn out of those parking lots. So by removing the bus going in there, we're able to save that amount of time, which will reduce the amount of time that we are running down. But the new buses have helped to reduce some of the delays as well because they have ramps that are working more reliably, so to get wheelchairs on and off doesn't take as much time. And depending on these changes though, we would in the future be looking to potentially change the schedule even more. If we were to get this expansion of service and a new bus, then we could completely redesign the local service and improve that reliability even more.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the answer. And I did read that in the report, but I wasn't sure it was really that one offending stop that was causing spin-off of everything else. Okay, thank you.
Going once, going twice. I don't see anybody else on here, so thank you very much. I guess next steps will be that we will see this back at budget time.
Correct, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So as they make their way out, we have Clayton Northey making his way up for Enterprise Resource Planning Review.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Clayton Northey. I'm the manager of accounting and reporting for the city, and today I am presenting the findings of the Enterprise Resource Planning Software Review. Back in 2022's budget, Council approved an assessment of the city's ERP systems after Microsoft announced changes to the lifecycle program related to Microsoft Dynamics GP, our core financial system, that indicated that it is reaching its end of life. Since then, they have done some further announcements that further indicate that we are moving towards end of life with that software. The city's ERP systems primarily consist of our core financial software, which does all of the accounting, all of the utility billing, property tax billing, payroll, the various reporting systems within GP, as well as a number of ancillary systems that do handle budgeting, and project management, work order management, job costing, point of sale, timesheets, and other services. The ERP review was intended to identify gaps in existing functionality and capabilities, as well as to identify a long-term make long-term recommendations regarding ERP renewal or replacement. The report included a number of recommendations, as well as a roadmap for ERP replacement, a current gap assessment, an ERP market scan to look what's out there in the market for systems right now, as well as functionality requirements for a potential future procurement process. The review did recommend that the city replace its current ERP system, that it is not meeting, or sorry, replace its current ERP. It also makes recommendations regarding several pre-RFP initiatives that are intended to put the city on a solid foundation for implementing a new system. The report estimates that the ERP will take more than 30 months to do a full implementation, and will cost between $4.9 and $5.4 million, excluding those pre-RFP initiatives. As part of the gap assessment, the city's consultant Tanzas Solutions conducted a series of stakeholder engagement sessions with various groups across the organization. It also conducted a review of current software, documentation, and organization service levels. The gap assessment report identified a number of current issues with categorized into different areas related to people, process, implementation, and technology. The assessment also identified the ideal state, or what it would take to get us to meet our current needs associated with closing those gaps. Significant findings from the report include that Dynamics is not currently meeting city staff needs. Because it has limited training materials, making the system difficult to learn. There's been minimal vendor support and several issues related to systems performance. Staff need to perform a number of standard finance tasks outside of the system due to lack of system capabilities. The gap assessment also identified a number of data governance issues related to data quality concern, a heavy reliance on manual processes and spreadsheets due to a lack of availability of information, and issues related to several integrations with other systems. The review recommends that the city complete the 10 pre-RFP initiatives before beginning work on replacing Dynamics GP. These initiatives are focused around establishing project governance, identifying interim solutions to address immediate issues, adopting a data governance framework, and reviewing the city's GL structure and integrations with integration processes. These recommendations may require that some existing staff be seconded to a project, and to have their positions backfilled in order to maintain current service levels across the city. Replacing, because the cost is estimated to be 4.9 to 5.4 million. The city will be, and that there is no current contribution to reserves related to ERP replacement. The city will be including, or administration will be including in its recommendations in 2025 budget, an increase of the contribution to financial reserves in order to fund a replacement. The 2025 budget is also expected to include a recommendation for additional staff and resources to begin work on the pre-RFP initiatives. Currently, a team has been identified to start work on some of those pre-RFP initiatives that can be done within existing workloads. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. First, we'll go to Councillor Harris.
Clayton, thanks for the report. A couple of questions. Obviously, there are a number of major software offerings out there to replace what we've got now, SAP, for example, or things of that nature, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Harris, that's correct.
Right, okay. Well, a couple of things. One, I see this as a back office kind of thing, and so what was the primary reason for bringing it to council as opposed to just bringing forward, you know, a recommendation that we ultimately do this as a project over time? I mean, this is good information, but it's pretty nitty gritty, and you know, looking at the Tandis report in terms of their, you know, their model, their analytical model, that's kind of stuff that's back office sort of stuff. Would you agree with that? And this is not a criticism. This is always good information, but it's really nitty gritty.
Through the chair to Councillor Harris, the main reason for bringing this to council is to put this in front, make sure that council is aware of the additional cost that's going to be incurred. There's a significant cost associated with this system to replace, and there's going to be a significant operational impact to most areas within the city. So while it is back office, it will have a major impact on city operations going forward as we move forward with the transition.
Well, that pretty well confirms what I guess we've all probably figured out, that with that type of a project cost for staff and for software implementation, change management, and that's another thing, because this really is going to need a major change management initiative. And so I read that basically that's covered off. Are you comfortable with kind of where we're going from that standpoint? Because most ERP implementation happens because the change is not grasped by the participants.
Through the chair to Councillor Harris, I am comfortable with the recommendations that are contained in the report and the emphasis that's given to change management within that report. It's been widely recognized as we've gone through the process on this one that making sure that we're able to communicate the importance of this and the process involved, that we don't disrupt current service levels, but also that we are able to bring people along with it.
Yeah. Well, I was glad to see your steering committee structure shows the city manager as the executive sponsor, because you probably know as well as most that change management initiatives fail because there's a lack of executive sponsorship. So I'm glad to see that this is well thought out. It's good information. Again, it's really nitty gritty, and most elected officials would probably look at it and go, well, glad somebody's looking after this stuff. So I'm glad to see that. So thanks for that information.
Thank you, Mayor Ketcher.
Okay, so I'm not going to be quite so kind. So $4.9 to $5.4 million. So it's based on a recommendation. What happens if council said, let's hold off a year and we'll start putting some money into a reserve now so that we're not hitting our residents with a 4, 5, 10% tax increase for something like this?
Through the chair to Mayor Ketcher, the there is going to be continued support after the current version that we're on with GP. There is continued support after there. They are restricting that support for security updates, software updates, hot fixes, payroll tax changes. But there's an increasing, there's not going to be new features or major updates to the system. The risk is that it's becoming increasingly hard to train new staff on those systems. There's an increasing reliance on spreadsheets, information that's kept outside the system, and there's a lot of lost hours as a result of those manual processes. Now, that said, we can move past 2028 if needed.
So it could be pushed out. Okay. Because I just think that's, I think that's an incredible amount of money. I know you're talking 30 months in order to do this, but as we know, when it comes to computerization and technology, by the time you hit the end of 30 months, it's already probably requiring something new already. So I look forward to this coming at budget, but I tell you, I'm sure going to be asking a lot more questions about it, because I don't see us spending $5.4 million plus whatever the additional costs are right now. I think there's got to be a way to spread those out. So those are going to be some of my comments and feedback when this comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just interject a few comments. It's a significant amount of money and time to go into switching the system. And I'm just curious what the lifespan of a new system is. Once we get everything up and running for $5 or so million in 3 years, how much longer do we have with that new system?
Madam Chair, there's a typically within municipal governments, you're looking at a minimum 10 years. Our current system is about 24 years old now. I know that another municipality nearby us had one that they're going through the implementation of, or went through last year, that was approximately 30 years old. That's probably too long. But a 10 to 15 year time horizon, especially with most new systems being cloud-based, where there's automatic updates and continual updates to them, is probably realistic.
Okay. And I know we've done an incredibly good job of putting money into reserves for projects and capital costs and whatnot, so that these big costs don't happen. And I'm just curious if we know of any other major software liabilities that we have within the city of Fort Saskatchewan that don't have, maybe that's not a question for you, but that don't actually have a reserve attached that we should be considering.
To Councillor Bacon, I wouldn't want to speak a guess on that one at the moment. I know that there are some other assets that we don't have full reserve support for yet. We're working towards that. We've been working towards that for a number of years, and we are continuing to do that as we move forward. But I couldn't give a specific amount or a specific asset being identified.
That's fair. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, just along the last two lines of questioning. So why weren't we contributing to reserves for this large one-time capital cost that we could be experiencing? Obviously, this is a large information system.
Through your worship through the chair to Councillor Nguyen, I think as we've moved forward with our financial reserves, the emphasis has been on infrastructure and mobile equipment, or various equipments that we have, as opposed to doing software replacement or software renewal. Again, the current system is 24 years old, and it's been largely seen as an operating project, operating cost, rather than as a capital system. So I think that's part of a transition in the approach and the look that we've done. I know beginning with Intelli, we started putting money into reserves, and some of the other softwares that we've brought in more recently, we've started that transition.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah.
Councillor Blizzard?
Yeah, most of the questions have been answered that I've been scratching down here, but the 4.9 to 5.4 million is a big amount. And I assume, though, that's a one-time, there might be some ongoing attached, but most of that's a one-time. And I say capital, but it's not really capital, kind of.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, there is a one-time component to this, but there is a one-time capital component to a replacement. There's also ongoing costs for licensing as you move forward. Once you have that for licensing and software maintenance, those would be captured. They're not the largest portion, and the other part is going to be additional in-house support if down the road as you make that transition. With systems as they become more complex, they require more support.
I suppose, but when you said there's ongoing, isn't there ongoing right now with the current system? Is it going to be quite an increase from what we currently do for licensing?
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, there would still be an increase to what we currently have for software licensing and maintenance.
Okay.
There would be an increase.
Okay. And one more. I think the other one was answered. So questions were also asked about why isn't there reserve? Are we planning one for this? Because it kind of sounds like we should have one.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, we do have an IT reserve, and we have over the last number of years, like I said, we do have a reserve for this type of for software as well as IT equipment. We just don't have a reserve transfer related to ERP, so we're not putting enough away into the reserve to plan for future replacements of these type of softwares.
I get that. So are we planning on that?
Through the chair, we are putting that into the plan is to put that into the 2025 budget.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Mayor Ketcher on round 2.
Okay, just remind me again, what does 1% tax increase? How many dollars are associated with that?
Through your worship, I believe that would be about 500,000.
And what you're proposing is saying that so you would need 4.9 million to 5.4 million. Would that be over 3 years? And I only ask that because at 500,000, that's a 10%.
Through your worship, we have not put a specific number to it. We would not be. I don't believe that we've decided to put a specific number to that just yet. I don't know if Troy has anything further.
Yeah, so to your worship, the bulk of the 5.7 million would be a one-time cost, and then there's a component, like we just want to set council's expectations up when the project is done. There will be an increase in the ongoing amount, but it'll be more in the hundreds of thousands, not in the millions. So one possibility is that the 5.7 million gets paid for internally, comes out of a reserve. And then what we would do is create a payback schedule so the money can be paid back over a longer period of time. So we would need the money up front, but we could pay it back. It's almost like an internal borrowing strategy of sorts.
Okay, but then wouldn't there be a double hit if then you're taking that and then you're also saying, well, now I need $500,000 a year to go into reserves to fund a future replacement?
Yeah, through your worship, if the intent is to pay it back and to create a reserve, what you might want to do is set an amount that allows you over the first
8 or 10 years to pay that amount back, and then that contribution continues on and becomes your reserve contribution. So what we'll want to do is, when council approves this work to start, is we'll have a financing plan available for council to approve along with the project.
Okay, and just to confirm though, you indicated that it potentially could get pushed back to 2028. So if that was the case, could we not start putting some funds aside now as opposed to taking all that money out?
Yeah, through your worship, it could get pushed, and we could do that as well. We could start setting money aside now. It's not going to be our recommendation because of the support that's timing out with our primary software, but as an alternative, yes, we could wait on it and start to put money away.
If you allow me one more. So we keep talking about optimal balances in our reserves. So if we just keep taking the money out and say, well, we'll just pay it back, how do we ever get to your optimal balances? Because it just feels like they're just there and we're just gonna,
The way to get there faster is to increase the contributions to the reserve, and that requires more taxes.
Okay,
So,
but as we're in committee of the whole and I still have the floor, but that just says that we have to be careful that we're not just keep going back to the taxpayers. We need to have better plans than that. So I'll leave this till budget time and you'll hear me. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Harris.
So Clayton, the amortization period for software and for a tool set like this is probably about 15 to 18 years.
Through the chair to Councillor Harris, I believe that's the case. That would be at least 15 years.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about a major tool set to get work done that ultimately allows the organization, and this is a counterpoint to what the mayor is talking about, to ultimately do the things we need to do. So it's a cost to deliver the service. Could we have thought about contributing this sooner? Possibly. But the situation in terms of software not being supported, how recent, refresh my memory, in terms of Microsoft deciding to step away from it?
Through the chair, Councillor Harris, the first announcement that we had was in 2021 that they were ceasing service in 2028 for the then existing version. They have since updated that. However, they've also announced that they are ceasing new sales in 2025 and 2026, depending on the license type, and that after which it would be more of a care and maintenance sort of program available for existing customers.
Yeah. Okay. So ultimately, it's a tool that we use to deliver services. By and large, you keep track of information. It's mission critical. You can't get away from it. We're going to have to expend it one way or the other. So we're going to have an opportunity to have this conversation of budget to address kind of what the mayor's talking about. I don't disagree with what she's saying. I think it's prudence in relation to how we approach the cost of service that we ultimately undertake and the tools by which we do it. It's no different than buying a big grader. Big grader. This is a big grader. Anyways, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just looking at next steps. So in the 2025 budget, we're going to be looking at an increased contribution to financial reserve request. And I guess the first request on this is going to be the additional staff and resources for the RFP work. So I'm assuming then, I'm not assuming it's in here, that the bulk of this money will come in the 2026.
Through your, sorry, Madam Chair, there's I think this work would meaningfully start probably in 2026, 2027, after we've completed some of the pre-RFP work that needs to happen to make this successful.
Right. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody else chiming in, so you are off the hook for now. We'll move on in the agenda. Councillor inquiries. Councillor Harris.
My wife sent me a video of Fort Centre Park, and it looks like there's some activity going down in Fort Centre Park with the construction of trails and the like, and the planting of trees. Can administration give us an update as to kind of what the status is and kind of when that work's going to get completed and when we're going to see really nice granular trails down there. How's that coming along?
Through the chair, that is correct. The work that is happening is part of Fort Center Park. The contract's been signed, the contractor's at work, and we're hoping it'll be wrapped up at the end of the season.
Okay. Subsequent to that, we had a conversation. We were talking about this project a while ago, and coming off past the prisoner cemetery along the trail, there was some conversation as to whether we would have a wooden staircase or whether there'd be a sloping trail access or whatever. What ultimately happened? What did we land on in terms of bringing access down off of that trail system up by the cemetery down into Fort Center Park by the highway?
Through the chair, I believe we opted for earth embedded stairs, but let me take a look and confirm.
Yeah, that's not critical. I was just curious. I know we had this it was quite a long discussion of budget, I recall, and I never did recall what we end up agreeing on. So yeah, that would be good background information. So thanks for that update.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else. We do have a couple items for the closed session. If I could get a motion to move in camera. Thank you, Councillor Blizzard.
I make a motion that we move in camera for the items covered under FOIP.
Thank you. Close the motion.
What?
And that is carried. So we shall move in camera. Thank you.